dopamine receptors, addiction, and other topics related to how people process medication, especially opioids. That was the topic of discussion last night with our Ozarks First contributors Nick Reed and Amy Blansett. And tonight, we feature the second part of that discussion. Take a look.
And I love this, the dopamine receptor,
Yes.
so it's how your brain is processing these pills.
Correct.
And people are different on each of these.
So we have different receptors in our brain. Someone who is even obese has a decreased receptor to the dopamine because they've overloaded the system. So it takes more to get the same response. Some people have very activated dopamine receptors, so it takes very little to get the response. And then that's one of the things with addiction. I need more and more because those dopamine receptors begin to close. So that is a thing where I can take a pill and I need very, very little of it. It does its job and I'm done, and I'm less likely then to need more and more in that addiction. Others have blunted receptors and they're going to need more and more of it in order to get the same response. That's the part of addiction. That's the basic science of it. And so as you mentioned, some people just, all it takes is one and they're needing that fix, that fill.
But it's still their problem.
Well, and this is the other thing too. There is sometimes a perception people have that if you say ultimately it is that individual's responsibility, that equates to, I don't care, it's their problem.
No,
it doesn't.
Care.
But I know, but some people they think whenever you say, okay, ultimately when it comes down to it, there's one person that can put forth the effort and must have the desire in order to stop that sort of destructive behavior, and that is that person. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't provide help. That doesn't mean that they don't need help. But ultimately,
but not the government coming in and suing?
And let me tell you why that is not a good idea. What is going to happen, and here's what I fear is going to happen, is the drug companies that manufacture these, they're going to see them as dangerous territory. They're going to see it as a total money loss. And they're going to just totally get out of the market of it. And while some will say, oh, well, that's great, that will solve this problem, there are a lot of people whose day-to-day lives depend on having something because they have chronic pain. And we're already seeing those people impacted. Doctors are cutting back people who do need higher levels than normal because of all that fancy stuff that Amy was talking about earlier. But because on paper it looks like, boy, they're prescribing a lot to this person and this person. And I talk about this sometimes on my show, and so I get a lot of feedback from people that are like, thank goodness someone's talking about this. My doctor, has cut me back and I'm in constant pain. And so everybody's going to start protecting themselves. Doctors are already doing it. And now you're going to have these companies that just stop even research and development on new, more effective painkillers because they're going to see it as total danger zone, and we're going to get targeted.
Because of the risk that this has created, it creates the necessity for research in a different direction. Now that we know that this part of the brain being targeted leads to addiction, there are ways now to say, okay, if we understand that aspect, but we still have to work with these receptors, there are different ways that we create chemical chains on when and how they react. So that's how generics come into play. So hopefully, you're right, that it could say we're just out of this field, or there are individuals way smarter than using the word dopamine and what I know that will be able to say, we've got to target pain from a different area, and this should lead to very fast-tracked alternatives. Let's hope that's the way that it goes. But we know how, hope and those sort of things go.
And I think, too, now government's emboldened, and all you need are a bunch of politicians saying, and now, over here, we've had this abuse going on, so let's go after this practice.
Well, and let's be honest about it, it's about money for a lot. And I think we saw this when it came to tobacco industry lawsuits. Not that there aren't some people who, I believe in a misdirected way, think this is the right way to go. But in these pharmaceutical companies, they know it. All it takes is that one judge to say, cha-ching for some state suing, and every state that has a budget gap and needs more money, and let's be honest, they always want more money, they're going to see that as a cash cow, and they're just going to go after them. Right. Which is one of the reasons I imagine that the one company filed bankruptcy as part of their settlement.
Their plan. Well, and also that is the part too where the solutions now are all right, how do we quickly file bankruptcy so that we can create a payoff plan? Because the litigation process of getting our government involved and getting legal involved and then all the other things that start tacking on, any money that might, I'm using the word might, any money that might be used future and for good to fix or be a part of solutions that were created by the drug will be eaten up in legal fees. And we go back to, you know, someone's making money on those, and that money then gets distributed very quickly. So it's this weird necessary evil until, like, what's a different solution? If litigation consumes all the funds, what good was that? So I hate to say, at least there's a bit of this saying, now, but who's managing that money? Where's the money going? And if it's going to foundations like Missouri Foundation and for Health and others that then get to put practice in place that help undo some of the damage, great. But we'll see where and how it gets funneled and whether or not that money gets put to good.
All right, let's you and I just sit back and listen to Nick for a minute, because we're going to give you the last word.
Oh.
You get the last minute to yourself. Oh. How you like this? Because I'm curious. Yeah. I'm curious, Nick. The government shouldn't be involved. That's the point you've got. And I see your point with that. How would this have turned out better? Or how would this have turned out in some way to correct the systemic problem without the government lawsuit? Go.
Well, a lot of it, I mean, there's a cultural component to this, which is a very, very difficult answer because there's not some easy fix. You can't create a department of this or some new law.
Culture.
Yeah,
Maybe I'm gonna start that.
Well, you might as well. You can get a grant, I'm sure, for it. Maybe they can take some of the money from the lawsuit and give it to you. There you go. See, coming up with solutions right here. There does, I think, need to first off really understand what we are talking about and understand that the addiction that comes along is not created because doctors prescribe too many. Not that they should, but that's not what causes addiction, or that pharmaceutical companies somehow trick people into becoming addicted. That occurs on an individual basis, and then it's how to most effectively treat and deal with that. And it's easier for me to say what doesn't work than what does, but I really truly believe that in the end, nobody wins other than people who want the cash from the settlements and government. Nobody wins going about it this way.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Amy Blansett and Nick Reed talking about a really tough situation for a lot of folks, impacting neighbors we have here in the Ozarks, and hopefully we can find a way through. We'll be back after this.